Chapter 7. The courtyard was a miserable, freezing battlefield in the pale, indifferent light of dawn. We were gathered desperately beneath a massive golden shield. Its magical surface was shimmering like liquid sun above us. The surviving department mages were chanting in unison. Their faces were slick with sweat as they fought a losing battle to keep the barrier alive. Beyond the shimmering gold, the vampire army loomed. Their anticipation was a physical weight in the air, and their silence was somehow infinitely more terrifying than any war cry could be. I stood near the center of our ragged formation, clutching my staff so hard my knuckles were stark white. My eyes darted anxiously between the edges of our shield and the red-eyed predators waiting just outside. My father, Remus, stood tall beside me. His blue cloak billowed slightly in the bitter wind. I could see his broad shoulders sagging under the crushing weight of commands he had to give, though he tried to hide it. Villain was there too, bloodied but entirely unbowed. His jaw was set in pure, stubborn defiance. And then she arrived. Martha stood high on a ridge overlooking our pathetic last stand. Her velvet dress hung in ruined tatters. She raised a hand to her lips and unleashed a vampire whisper, a bone-scraping sound that cut straight through the morning chill and made my teeth ache. Volunteer stepped up beside her, his crimson eyes locked onto hers in a silent agreement. He began to chant. It was a deep, resonant growl that I felt all the way to the very down of my boots. A thick, roiling storm of black energy spiraled from his hands. Martha joined him without hesitation. Her red magic was weaving perfectly with his darkness like a serpent's coils. The combined beam of red and black struck our golden shield with a deafening roar. The sheer impact sent violent shockwaves, rippling forward, shrugging the ancient castle walls and knocking half our soldiers to their knees. Cracks immediately fractured the golden surface, spreading glowing rifts like wildfire across the dome. "Hold it!" a desperate mage cried out. His face was slick with sweat. But it was utterly useless. With a sound like 1,000 mirrors shattering all at once, our shield collapsed. The golden shards dissolved into the freezing air, leaving us completely exposed. Panic seized the courtyard instantly. Soldiers scrambled frantically to form a ragged line with shaking hands, while our exhausted mages threw up weak, flickering barriers that looked about as sturdy as wet paper. Martha moved through the absolute chaos like a shadow. Her claws were flashing as she effortlessly cut down anyone stupid enough to stand in her way. I watched her cleanly sidestep a young soldier's desperate lunge, throwing her claws across his ribs and dropping him to the stones without even breaking her stride. She cut a path straight to Volunteer, taking her place at his side. And that's when I saw it. In her grip, she held the orb of isolation, but it wasn't pulsing with its cold blue light. It was cracked down the middle, dead, dark, a useless, broken rock. The vampires behind them shifted in eager anticipation. A low hiss arose from their ranks, completely unaware that the grand prize of their bloody siege was ruined. My father stepped forward. He unleashed a brilliant, blinding arc of grey magic that forced the vampire front line to scrape backwards across the cobblestones, giving us 10 meters of breathing room. "Enough," he shouted. His voice was raw, with a terrible mixture of fury and absolute despair. His grey eyes locked onto Volunteer. "We need to talk." Martha sneered at him. Her voice was as sharp as a blade. "There is nothing to discuss. We have won." Volunteer simply raised a hand to silence her. "Step forward, Remus," he commanded. His tone was calm but completely unyielding. My father advanced. His heavy cloak swirled around him. His hands were clenched tightly at his sides. Up close, the lines of strain etched deeply into his face were agonizing to look at. He glanced at the broken orb in Martha's hand. His jaw ticked, and then looked back at the vampire lord. "We have lost," my father said. The words hang heavy and final in the freezing air. "I accept our defeat. I will apologize for the department's actions, offer gold, whatever you demand, but I want the orb back." My heart stopped in my chest. "Father, no, you can't!" I yelled from behind him as my voice pierced the quiet with desperation. He raised a single hand without looking back at me, and my protest died painfully in my dry throat. Volunteer tilted his head. I could see the cold, calculating gears turning in his ageless head. He knew the orb was busted. He knew this entire siege had technically been a failure. But his poker face was absolute perfection. A flicker of dark curiosity sparked in the depth of his crimson eyes. "And what do you offer in return for such a prize?" Volunteer asked. My father swallowed hard. "The Fang of Infinity." A collective gasp ripped through the courtyard. The Fang! It was a myth to us, the first vampire's relic, said to hold limitless power, forged when the father of vampires crossed from the infinite lands. The department had supposedly stolen and locked it away during the World War. To my people, it was a ghost story. To the vampires murmuring greedily in front of us, it was everything. A young soldier next to me, barely more than a boy, leaned towards an older comrade. "What is this Fang?" he whispered frantically. The older soldier spoke softly. His face was lit with sheer terror. "It has the father of vampires' power sealed in it. To us, it's a myth. To them, it's everything." Volunteer turned his piercing gaze to Martha. "Did you complete both tasks?" he asked with quiet command. She hesitated for a fraction of a second as she kept her red eyes unreadable. "Yes," she said resolutely. With a flick of her wrist, she tossed the dead, cracked orb to him. He caught it smoothly, his fingers wrapped around the ruined stone. My father's eyes narrowed in immediate sharp suspicion. Both tasks? Volunteer looked back at us, and his response was a single, chilling word. "Sarah." The name struck me like a physical thunderbolt. My breath vanished. The world tilted violently sideways. I collapsed heavily to my knees on the unforgiving stone, with my staff dropping uselessly to the ground. "Mama." The word echoed endlessly in my empty head. Sobs began to tear out of my chest, violently and unstoppably. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see. The cold courtyard faded into a blur of meaningless shapes. A single tear traced down my father's cheek, glinting in the pale dawn light, but he stubbornly held his ground. He didn't turn to me. He couldn't. "My offer stands," my father said. His voice stood entirely unshaken despite the absolute devastation in his eyes. Volunteer studied him, realizing he had just traded a useless, broken rock for the ultimate vampire relic. He nodded once. Agreed. My father raised his hands, releasing a shuddering breath. A blinding beam of grey light lanced straight up into the bruised sky. splitting the winter clouds. A moment later, Alinis, the head of the department, materialized in a brilliant burst of gold. He was draped in shimmering white and golden robes. His silver hair framed a face that was both wise and utterly sly. Lord Remus Lesto and Volunteer the Wise have made a deal, Alinis announced smoothly. His tone was laced with a sick undercurrent of amusement. As head of the Sixth World Department, I declare it official. In his hand, the Fang of Infinity appeared. It radiated a pulsing purple aura that physically pressed against the air, sending a collective chill through everyone watching. With a casual flicker of magic, Alinis sent the Fang drifting towards Volunteer, while the broken blue orb glided back towards the department head in silent, tense exchange. The deal is done, Alinis said, with his tone being final. Volunteer inclined his head formally, thanking him. Before turning his back on us, he commanded his army to leave the castle. The vampires withdrew in a swift, disciplined march, vanishing into the snow like ghosts. Martha followed her father, casting one last, unreadable glance over her shoulder. Alinis offered my father a fleeting, cunning smile before vanishing in a ray of sunlight. I didn't want for anyone to speak. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I sprinted blindly through the castle halls. My boots slipped on the stone as I tore down into the basement vault. I was choking on air that was terrifyingly thick with the smell of blood and decay. And there she was. My mother, Sarah, was sprawled across the cold, cracked marble. Her once vibrant form was entirely still and cold. Her brilliant green eyes were empty. I dropped to my knees beside her, pulling her lifeless body into my arms. Her blood stained my clothes, but I didn't care. I buried my face in her shoulder and screamed. "Mama," I sobbed, with my voice breaking as tears streamed relentlessly down my face. "What are we going to do now? She's gone." I didn't hear him come in, but my father was suddenly there, lingering near a pile of slaughtered vampire corpses. His gaze was incredibly sharp despite the crushing weight of his grief. Amidst the dead, one of them stirred. It was the vampire girl who had come with Martha, Vera. Her purple eyes slowly flickered open as a faint breath escaped her pale lips. A slow, terrifying smile curved my father's mouth. A dark spark of cold resolve ignited his chest. "I think I have an idea," he said. It was a heavy, violent promise woven into his low voice. I looked at him, my tear-streaked face twisted in utter confusion. "What idea, father? She's—" "Not yet," Remus interrupted, kneeling directly beside the dying vampire. His hands glowed faintly with grey magic as he assessed and stabilized her severe wounds. "She is alive, barely, but alive. We can use that." I wiped my eyes. My voice trembled with a morbid, desperate curiosity. "Use it how?" My father met my gaze. The warlord was back, and there was no mercy left in him. "To fight back?" he said. His voice was cold and completely unyielding. "To make this right. We have lost too much to give up now."